The tragic end of the 12 disciples. These 12 men didn't gain power or wealth. They gained scars. They gained prisons. They gained martyrdom. Each one died violently, except one. And every death was a statement: Jesus is alive, and I will not deny him. This is not the Sunday school version. This is the blood-soaked, truth-torn, soul-rending end of the 12 men who walked with God in the flesh. This is the martyrs, how the 12 disciples of Jesus really died. Number 1, Peter, the crucified rock. Peter was the bold one, the outspoken leader, the one who swore he'd die for Jesus, only to deny him 3 times by a campfire. But Jesus restored him. 3 denials, followed by 3 affirmations of love. Peter was forgiven, but he would never forget. He went on to lead the church in Jerusalem, then Antioch, and finally Rome. He preached boldly in synagogues and city streets. He healed the lame and confronted corrupt rulers. He watched his friends one by one, arrested, beaten, executed. But he kept preaching. Then came Nero, a mad emperor, a tyrant who blamed Christians for the great fire of Rome and unleashed unspeakable torture. Peter was arrested. Tradition says he was forced to watch his wife executed first. As she was led away, he whispered to her, "Remember the Lord." And then came his own sentence: crucifixion. But Peter had one request. He said, "I am not worthy to die as my Lord died." So they turned the cross upside down. Imagine that. Nailed, suspended by his wrists and ankles, with his head downward, blood rushing, suffocating faster. No comfort, no dignity, just pain and the mocking eyes of Rome. But his last breath echoed louder than Caesar's edicts: Jesus is Lord. That upside-down cross has become Peter's symbol to this day, a sign of humility, sacrifice, and defiance of worldly power. Number 2, Andrew, the preacher of the cross. Andrew was Peter's brother, but his faith was no shadow. It was Andrew who first introduced Peter to Jesus. From the beginning, he was bringing others to Christ. He traveled far beyond Judea. Some say he went to the Black Sea region, to modern-day Ukraine, Russia, and Greece. Wherever he went, he spoke with the same passion that once made fishermen drop their nets to follow a stranger from Nazareth. In the Greek city of Patras, Andrew's preaching stirred hearts and disrupted lives. The wife of the Roman proconsul became a Christian, and that sealed Andrew's fate. The governor ordered his death by crucifixion. But like his brother Peter, Andrew had a request. He didn't want a Roman-style cross. He chose a diagonal cross, what we now call the St. Andrew's cross, to die differently from his Lord. He wasn't nailed. He was bound with cords, tight enough to hold, loose enough to keep him alive. Longer. For 2 days, Andrew hung there, his arms stretched, his muscles tearing, his lungs collapsing. And as people passed, he preached. Can you imagine it? A man slowly dying, shouting words of hope and salvation with every ragged breath, until silence finally claimed him. But the cross he died on would not become a symbol of shame. It would become a symbol of endurance and eternal life. Number 3, James the Greater, the first apostle to be killed. James, the son of Zebedee, brother to John, one half of the sons of thunder. He was fiery, bold, and deeply devoted. He was one of the 3 closest to Jesus, present at the Transfiguration in the Garden of Gethsemane, and beside him during miracles only few ever saw. But James's story after Christ's resurrection is a short one, and it ends in blood. The book of Acts tells us that Herod Agrippa I, the king of Judea, sought to win favor with the Jewish elite by crushing the early church. And so he did something unthinkable. He executed James, the first of the 12 to die for Jesus. No trial, no appeals, just a Roman sword and a public statement. This is what happens when you follow the Nazarene. James was likely dragged through the streets in chains, surrounded by soldiers, the crowd spitting and shouting, and as the executioner raised his sword, something happened that history could not ignore. A man in the crowd, possibly the guard who had arrested him, was so moved by James's peace and courage, he confessed Christ on the spot. and he too was beheaded, right there next to James. Two men, one sword, and a legacy that would ripple through the church for centuries. James never wrote a gospel. He left no epistles. But his death was a trumpet blast that shook the foundations of Jerusalem. This faith is real. It's worth dying for. Worth. Number 4, John, the apostle who wouldn't die. John, the beloved, the youngest disciple, the one who leaned on Jesus' chest at the Last Supper, the only one who didn't abandon Jesus at the cross. John's love was deep, but so was his pain. After the resurrection, John became a pillar in the church, preaching across Judea and Ephesus, defending the truth against false teachers, and caring for Mary, the mother of Jesus. But even he wasn't spared persecution. Under Emperor Domitian, John was arrested and brought before a Roman tribunal. The sentence? Death by boiling oil. Imagine it, your body lowered into a cauldron of seething liquid, skin blistering, lungs burning with every scream. Except, it didn't happen. John survived. Miraculously. The oil didn't harm him. Enraged, the emperor exiled him to Patmos, a desolate volcanic island off the coast of Greece. It was a place for criminals and outcasts, but for John, it became holy ground. There, alone among the jagged rocks and crashing waves, John received the most powerful vision in the Bible, the revelation of Jesus Christ. He saw the throne of God. He saw the end of days. He saw the Lamb who was slain, returning as the conquering king. And he wrote it all down. John eventually returned to Ephesus, where he died an old man, the only disciple to die of natural causes. But don't let that fool you. He lived a life marked by suffering, exile, and spiritual battle. He didn't die by the sword, but he lived with scars that never left his soul. Number 5, Philip. Death in the pagan city. Philip was quiet but faithful. He was the one who said to Jesus, "Show us the Father, and it will be enough for us." To which Jesus replied, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." After Christ's resurrection, Philip journeyed through Asia Minor. He preached boldly in Hierapolis, a city known for its pagan temples and deep Roman roots. There he healed the sick, drove out demons, and shattered idols. Not with force, but with truth. But when he converted the wife of the city's proconsul, Rome had enough. He was arrested, beaten, and crucified upside down, some say on a tall pillar in front of a hostile crowd. But even as he hung dying, he preached. Some sources say his preaching was so powerful that the crowd begged for his life. But by then, it was too late. His body hung lifeless. But his message remained. The truth cannot be silenced, not even by death. Number 6, Bartholomew, flayed alive for the gospel. Bartholomew, also called Nathanael, was the disciple Jesus said had no deceit, a man of truth, a man of conviction. After the resurrection, Bartholomew is believed to have taken the gospel to India, Armenia, and Persia. In Armenia, he confronted a king publicly and exposed the lies of the priests who worshipped idols. The people began to turn to Christ, and the priests turned on Bartholomew. He was captured, and what happened next is among the most gruesome martyrdoms in Christian history. He was flayed alive. They stripped him, then peeled the skin from his body, slowly, methodically, from head to toe. Every nerve exposed, every breath a scream. And then they beheaded him. The image of a man who held to the truth, even as every inch of flesh was torn from his bones, has become iconic. Some cathedrals still depict him holding his own skin as a symbol of his endurance. Bartholomew died in agony, but he died in faith. Number 7, Thomas, the doubter who died in faith. Thomas is often remembered for one moment, doubt. Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, unless I touch his side. But when Jesus appeared and invited Thomas to feel his wounds, something changed forever. Thomas dropped to his knees and cried, "My Lord and my God!" From that moment on, doubt died, and courage was born. Thomas didn't stay in Judea. He traveled farther than any of the 12, to the distant coasts of India. He preached the gospel to kings and peasants, building a strong Christian presence that still exists in parts of India today. He baptized thousands, healed the sick, and challenged the Hindu priests and idol worshippers. But his boldness cost him. One day, while praying in a cave near modern-day Chennai, Thomas was attacked. He was surrounded by soldiers, and before he could escape, a spear was thrust through his body. He collapsed to the ground, bleeding, broken. But his final breath was a whisper of victory. "Into your hands I commit my spirit." The man once called Doubting Thomas had become the apostle of unshakable faith. Number 8, Matthew, the tax collector turned martyr. Matthew was a man of numbers, a tax collector, a traitor in the eyes of the Jews. But Jesus saw something more. "Follow me," and he did. Leaving his wealth behind, Matthew picked up a new tool, not a ledger, but a pen. He gave us the Gospel of Matthew, the most Jewish of the four, written to prove that Jesus was the promised Messiah. After the resurrection, Matthew traveled to Ethiopia, Persia, and beyond. He preached to the poorest of the poor. He confronted kings. He stood firm as the message of Christ clashed with the ancient religions of the region. In Ethiopia, according to tradition, Matthew converted the queen. Infuriated, the king ordered his death. He was stabbed in the back while celebrating communion. One moment, he was lifting the bread and cup. The next, his body fell forward, blood pooling at the foot of the altar. But his death was not the end. The church in Ethiopia exploded with growth, and today one of the oldest Christian communities on earth traces its roots back to Matthew the martyr. Number 9, James, thrown down, then beaten to death. James, the son of Alphaeus, called James the Less, not because he was insignificant, but perhaps because he was younger or shorter than the other James. He may have been the author of the Epistle of James, a letter so piercing, so practical, it still convicts readers today. James was a leader in the Jerusalem church, ministering under constant pressure from religious authorities. Eventually, the Pharisees had enough. They took James to the top of the temple, the very same pinnacle where Satan had tempted Jesus to jump. They ordered James to renounce Christ before the crowds, but James shouted instead, "Jesus is the Son of God, and he is coming again in glory." In rage, they pushed him off the roof. He hit the ground, broken but alive. So they gathered around him with clubs and stones and beat him to death. Some say a fuller, a man who cleansed wool, struck the final blow with his wooden staff. James died with praise on his lips. The rooftop where Satan once tried to break the Son of God became the place where a Son of God gave his life for the truth. Number 10, Jude, slain by pagan axes. Jude, also called Thaddeus, was the man who asked Jesus at the Last Supper, "Why do you show yourself to us and not to the world?" His question was honest. His heart was faithful. After Pentecost, Jude traveled to Mesopotamia and then Armenia, a land hostile to Christianity and drenched in pagan ritual. He performed miracles. He cast out demons. He tore down false altars and exposed the corruption of idol worship. But pagan priests do not give up power easily. In Armenia, Jude was captured alongside another disciple, Simon the Zealot. Both were tortured, and then Jude was hacked to death with an axe, his flesh torn apart by cold iron blades in front of a raging mob. His blood soaked the earth, but his message had already taken root. Even today, Armenian Christians remember Jude as one of their first apostles, a martyr who laid the foundation of their faith. Number 11, Simon the Zealot, killed for love, not hate. Simon had once been a zealot, a revolutionary determined to overthrow Roman oppression with violence. But Jesus showed him a new way, not war, but sacrifice, not rebellion, but love unto death. Simon's fiery spirit didn't die. It was redirected. He journeyed with Jude into Persia and Armenia, preaching the gospel with boldness. He witnessed miracles. He saw pagan temples fall, and he stared death in the face without flinching. When he and Jude were arrested, they were tortured relentlessly, stripped, beaten, starved. Simon was eventually sawed in half, possibly while still alive, a brutal death for a man who once dreamed of political revolution. Now he died for a heavenly kingdom. His blood cried out, not for vengeance, but for salvation. Number 12, Judas Iscariot. And then there was one, Judas. He walked with Jesus, ate with him, laughed beside him. He watched the blind see and the dead rise. And still, he sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Why? Was it greed? Was it disappointment that Jesus wouldn't overthrow Rome? Was it Satan himself whispering in his ear? We may never fully understand, but what we do know is this. When Judas saw Jesus condemned, he was filled with regret. He tried to return the silver. He threw it at the feet of the priests. And then he went to a field, tied a rope, and hanged himself. Acts tells us his body fell and burst open. His guts spilled across the ground. The man who betrayed the Son of God died alone, in shame, in horror. No redemption, no restoration, only tragedy. These 12 men didn't just preach the message, they became the message. Their lives were torn apart, not because they were rebels, but because they refused to deny what they knew was true. They could have chosen comfort, safety, silence, but instead they chose to suffer for something greater than themselves. Now ask yourself, if belief demands your comfort, your reputation, or even your life, is it still belief or just convenience? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in their place?